you monitoring the work that they are doing from home on a regular basis?
Yes, we are.
Every employee, do you have the numbers of the hours that are submitted? Are you counting how many times they're logging into their computers and responding to casework?
So our employees are subject to the same performance management processes and oversight they are whether they're teleworking or working in an office. And we have systems in place that our managers use to schedule, assign, and track workloads. And that includes individual employee workloads in many cases. So real-time understanding of what actions are being processed at any particular given time. Additionally, our employees are required to be accessible to their supervisors, clients, colleagues, and external parties during work hours via a variety of means, including instant messaging, video platforms, and telephone. They are connected to the workplace, whether they are in the office or at the home.
Then why is the backlogs for Social Security applicants increased from 41,000 to 107,000?
Because we've been historically underfunded for a number of years now.
I don't think you're underfunded. You're funded at the Nancy Pelosi levels. At the Democrat levels, we just continued that same funding.
So I would say
at pandemic level spending.
So I would say we'd have an increase of over 8 million beneficiaries over the last 10 years. At the same time, we experienced our lowest work staffing levels at the end of FY22. That's a math problem. I mean, that is a problem. If you have those workloads, increasing, and you don't have the staff to take care of those workloads, you're going to have the backlogs that you're talking about, Representative.
Mr. McKnelly, are you aware that in April of 2023, OMB issued guidance that called for increased, quote, meaningful in-person work?
I am.
So why has the Social Security Administration failed to provide any timeline for employees to return to the office?
Thank you for the question. So from a timeline perspective, our political leadership was back in the office in December of 2021. I think it's also important to note that in April of 2022, 75% of our workforce, our frontline workforce, which takes care of hearings, takes care of the field offices, they were also in on April of 2022. And right now, we are in the process of increasing headquarters and support staff in our headquarters offices.
So your response to the committee on September 14th failed to provide a response on how the agency plans to return to in-person work. And in fact, the only substantive answer was regarding the Social Security Administration's plans to adjust its real estate footprint. So I think it's very important if you're going to have a call for increased meaningful in-person work, then we need to understand that timeline and actually be able to fulfill it. So the Social Security Administration made an agreement that allows probationary employees with minor disciplinary actions and trainees to telework. Hold on, I'm not done. Like that's just, think about that. Employees who are on probation, who have minor disciplinary actions and trainees, they're allowed to telework. So wouldn't it make more sense for these workers under probation or who have had these disciplinary actions or trainees to work in the office to ensure improvement or to monitor their behavior?
So there is the authority to grant telework in those particular cases. What I would tell you is what we learned coming out of the pandemic is that our front office workers, specifically the trainees that you're talking about, they did not feel connected to the mission, and they did not feel connected to the teams that they were working with. So
it took a pandemic to realize that you can't train someone from home, that they need to be in person and connected to the team to actually learn how to do their job?
Well, no, that was the feedback that we got from them. And so when we had the opportunity to participate in a approach to get those individuals into the office so that they could work together, that's something that we do on a regular basis.
Well, it's unfortunate that you even had to experiment with that and receive that feedback to understand that someone isn't going to train well from home for a brand new position. Anyway, getting back to the Social Security Administration, do you know how many applications are currently on backlog?
What types of applications are you referring to?
So all sorts of applications that you have here in the administration. For instance, at the beginning of this year, the Social Security Administration reported that there were approximately 107,000 700,000 applications in the backlog. For reference, in January 2020, there were only 41,000. Now, this has resulted in several of my constituents receiving unsatisfactory customer service to receive the benefits that they have worked for their entire lives. In fact, 3 out of 5 applicants who are applying for their Social Security benefits, 3 out of 5 applicants will be denied benefits after waiting for approximately 7 months. About 8,000 people file for bankruptcy, and approximately 10,000 people die each year while awaiting a decision from your agency. All the while, you all are allowing delinquent employees to sit on their sofas at home instead of actually getting to work and doing their jobs. This is absolutely unacceptable.
So our employees are working whether they are in the office or at home.
Some of my friends on the other side of the aisle love by insinuation to people who are working on their couches. Oh, I'm sorry, not working. They're just sitting on their couches apparently doing nothing. So help me out here. When we adopt a telework program at an agency, is there any kind of screening that goes on when who's eligible and who's not for the program? Anyone? Mr. Levitt?
Yes, we're all responsible for undertaking training as well as abiding by an agreement that we put into place.
So there might be some jobs, for example, not eligible.
Correct.
And there might be some people whose job might be eligible, but they're not appropriate candidates. Would that be fair?
Yes, sir.
And you have a way of actually of discerning that and making that judgment. Okay. So insinuation number 2, like we took care of that one, there actually is a process. Insinuation number 2 is, but once we let someone telework, they're going to the golf course, they're watching soap operas, they're doing anything but work. Is that fair? Mr. Pelter, why don't you speak up? Or do you want the smear on your federal employees to go unchallenged? Is there data that would, in fact, contradict that assertion? Because that's the insinuation, which I think is pernicious, that's being propounded by some on the other side of the aisle.
Thank you, Congressman. I believe there is data and is a process in place to hit against that assertion. Our supervisors, our employees work hard to maintain their productivity. Every employee has a performance management plan. Their supervisors are responsible for.
So it's structured.
Yes, sir.
And you have a way of measuring productivity.
We do.
And you have a way of monitoring those who might be goofing off.
We do.
And do you find that all of those procedures in place create more productivity or less productivity from your workforce?
I think having the appropriate structures in place to monitor employee performance and productivity improves the overall productivity and mission delivery for our department.
Thank you. Mr. Levitt, you would agree with that or not?
Yes, I would. Trust is absolutely fundamental in employment engagement for driving performance, and it's the performance that matters, the results that we deliver for the American people. In our case, for example, it's not just a pandemic. It is responding to the opioid crisis, reaching 4 million people in rural areas with buprenorphine, the medication-assisted treatment for opioid use syndrome, and it's also the increased access to treatment and prevention efforts. It's the results that matter.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Stevens, would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. We have ways to monitor performance, whether someone is working at home or in the office.
And Mr. McKnelly?
I would agree. The Social Security Administration has a history of monitoring workloads prior to the pandemic.
I would just say, as somebody who was a manager and had big and medium-sized workforces, you know, there are jobs where I don't care whether you show up at all. What I care about is the outcome. So, for example, in the private sector, if your job is to write proposals to the federal government and you want a hit rate of X%, and you meet or exceed that, I don't care if you're at home watching soap operas and in your pajamas. Keep doing what you're doing because it's the outcome that matters. Not every job can say that. Not every job lends itself to telework. You know, a cop on the beat can't just call it in. He or she's got to be on the beat. but there are plenty of jobs where we can actually enhance productivity. And in the middle of a pandemic, thank God we had the structured program you described, because it saved lives. And I'm not going to be party, and neither are my colleagues, to the smearing of the federal workforce as if they're lazy, incompetent, and avoiding work. They actually continued to do their work in the midst of the worst pandemic in 100 years that cost 1.2 million of our citizens' lives. And thank God they were there, and thank God these programs were in place. I yield back.